Welcome to the site Overcome Your Mountain of Debt. In this tutorial, we will discuss the debts page and how to calculate your own personal debt plan. When we come to the debts page, there are instructions at the top on how to use this page. Below the instructions, there is a list of debts. This list of debts is the same list that is found in the book, so the example debt payoff that is illustrated in the book is outlined here on the website when you first come in, so that you have something to play around with. At the bottom of the page, you have some additional debt calculation and some display options for displaying additional information, and then the calculate button that is at the bottom. When we click the calculate button, it goes through the debt calculations for the debts as they are, as the information is entered on the debt listing, and any other options that are added, and we get a summary. The summary gives us some basic high-level information about our debt. There's 3 different columns that gives us summary information, labeled No Roll-Up, With Roll-Up, and What If. The No Roll-Up column is the column of our debts, the debt payoff, when we make the minimum payments, and only the minimum payments. So this has the maximum amount of money that will be paid out in our debts, and this is also the baseline for comparison of how much time and money is saved when we do a roll-up plan. With roll-up, that column shows us the information for doing a basic debt roll-up without any options. So with our minimum payment for our debts, when the first one is paid off, that payment for that debt that is just paid off gets paid to the next debt that has what we call the payment emphasis. The payment emphasis depends on the sort order of how we're determining our debt payoff. The what if column is based on the with roll-up when we have additional options that are added to our debt plan. As you see with right now, both of these columns are currently the same value. We did not add any additional options to our debt payoff. Above the summary information, we see various tabs, one labeled Highest Interest Rate, Lowest Balance, Payoff Order, Highest Payment to Debt Ratio, Lowest Interest Rate, Reverse Payoff Order, and Lowest Payment to Debt Ratio. As explained in the book, when we pay off our debts and we choose a strategy that will maximize either the interest saved or the time saved, there are some different strategies that can be used based on the makeup of our debts. So when we click on these, we notice that the values over here in the summary can change. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes the sort order doesn't change depending on which option is selected, which debt gets the next payment. This is not always the case. Sometimes highest interest rate is the best payoff. Actually, most of the time, highest interest rate becomes the best option for payoff. If we have a lot of debts that are just little small debts, lowest balance can give us a really good peace of mind when we knock out a bunch of debts all at once. Payoff order is when we have our debts lined up in the order that they're paid off with the minimum payment. There are some additional tabs with additional sort orders for calculating our debt plan, but we will not discuss those in this tutorial, maybe in a future tutorial. But just know that they're there, and there are additional options that can help to tailor and customize your own debt plan. In this tutorial, we are going to concentrate on just the highest interest rate, and we'll use that as an example. If we look at the with roll-up and the what if columns, currently right now they're the same because we don't have any options that have changed with our debt plan. Now the with roll-up has some interesting information in it concerning our debt plan with just paying the minimum payments and rolling them up to the next debt once one debt is paid off. In this case, in this simple example, The with roll-up, rolling up to the next debt with the next highest interest rate, saves $89,992.03. That's the interest savings. The payments haven't changed. The minimum payment is the same. The only difference is once the first payment is paid off, the payment for that debt goes to the next debt. You don't get that amount to go spend someplace else. That would be counterproductive and not help our debt plan. But if we just paid the minimum payment to the next debt, we would save that $89,992.03. The other interesting thing is that we saved 25 years and 2 months off of just paying the minimum payments for all of the debts. That's an incredible amount of savings. The with roll-up column without any options is impressive enough as it is, but if we want to tailor our debt plan and do some additional things, the what if column allows us to see what happens when we play around with some of the numbers and add some additional options to our debt plan. So some of the options that we have to work with when we want to do a what if scenario on our debts. Above the calculate button, we have some additional options that we can add to our debt plan. One is this additional margin and the lump sum amount. Now the lump sum amount is like, let's say your employer gives you a bonus, or you have some additional money that you want to just throw at a debt. And for our debt plan, in the debt calculation, we don't care which debt gets that. It's just whichever one the calculation determines should get it. And if we look at our options at the top of our summary, this would tell you, based on which option, which debt it would go to first. So let's say we want to throw $200 at a debt one time. This would be at the beginning of our debt calculation, and it will lower that debt's amount initially the first month by an additional $200. We enter that amount in, and we click calculate, and then when we look at our summary, we notice that the what if column is now different than the with roll-up. So the with roll-up has a savings of $89,992.03, but the what if does the debt roll-up and our additional options that we added. So the lump sum amount of $200 now takes us to a $90,000, $693.50 savings, and we save 25 years and 3 months versus 25 years and 2 months. So basically we threw 1 month of our payment down by adding that lump sum amount of $200, but we saved almost $700 in interest by doing that. Well, $700 in interest minus the $200 that we put in there, so about $500 in interest. Another option that we have for our what if scenario along with the lump sum amount is called margin. Now a lump sum amount is an amount that is added to our debt plan one time at the beginning of our debt plan calculations. The additional margin, however, is an amount that we add to each monthly payment. So an additional margin would be added to the minimum payment for the debt that currently has what we call the debt emphasis, the current emphasis, and that is determined by the sort order of our debt plan. So let's look at that. So I'm going to zero out the lump sum amount, and I'm going to add, say, $20 to our additional margin and click calculate again. When we look at our what if scenario, the additional $20 went to the debt with the highest interest rate. That helped to pay down that debt a little bit faster, and once it's paid off, then its minimum payment and the additional margin get added together and get rolled up into the next debt. If we look at our what if column, we see that compared to the with roll-up, we went from $89,992.03 to $93,075.88, and we dropped our payment time from 17 years 1 month to 16 years and 9 months. So we saved 4 months and almost $4,000 in interest by adding just $20 a month. These two options, the lump sum amount and the additional margin that affects our what-if calculations, are debt plan specific, meaning they are determined by the amount that you enter, but the debt plan pretty much says where they should go. So when you click calculate, the amounts are put into the debt plan kind of on autopilot, depending on the sort order for your debt plan calculation. Those sort orders, again, are these tabs at the top of this summary. So you really don't have a choice or any control over where they go, just the amounts that are added. However, in our debt listing here, we have some additional boxes that we can try to target how specific we want to get with those options. So in this scenario that we did, we had $20 that went to an additional margin. But let's say that we want to determine where those $20 go first, not necessarily have the calculations of the debt plan determine where they should go. So what we could do is we can make that 0, and then in these boxes where we have a column here for principal, a column here for payment, and another column for interest rate, we can play around with the values in here to see what would happen, what if we made a change. So if we wanted to add that $20, but we wanted to put them on a specific payment, we can add those $20 to any one of these. So let's say we want to add the $20 to this particular department store credit card. Let's say we really want to get rid of this credit card and we want to do it as fast as we can. So we can add the $20 to the current payment. So we'll make the payment $35 and hit calculate, and this will add that $20 to that particular card until it is paid off. And then, just like the additional margin down here for the entire debt plan, that $20 and that $15 for the department store credit card payment will then be rolled up into the next debt when the department store credit card is paid off. So if we look at this, that affected the what if slightly different than our original what if by putting the additional margin over here. It's now $93,012.21. So it saved a little bit less by putting it there because it wasn't necessarily the most efficient use of that $20 according to the debt plan. But if we really wanted to get rid of that credit card, that would be one way to do that. So we can take that out, put that $20 here, and calculate and see that value. Again, so this was instead of $75.88, it was $12.88. So there's a slight difference in putting it there. So the department store credit card number 2 was not the one with the payment emphasis. It probably was one of these with the 18%. Again, we're just looking at the highest interest rate cards. So you're probably saying to yourself that this summary information is very interesting, but it's not very exciting. It shows you some interest saved, total time saved, gives you some information that can help you, maybe motivate you to look into creating your own debt plan, but it's not really exciting. So in addition to the summary, we have some additional display options that will allow you to see some detail information to help you to customize your own debt plan. Those are in the View Amortization For drop-down list. In this list, we have a couple of options. We have the original payoff, the current payoff with roll-up, and the plan new payoff, or what if. The amortization and summary payoff information is displayed with the columns that you're already familiar with in the summary in mind. So if you want to see the detail information for the no roll-up option, so everything that's going to be in this column in the summary information will now be displayed when you click calculate, along with payoff information and the amortizations for each one of the debts with the no roll-up option. So we have the summary still, but now we have a payoff schedule for this debt plan. it starts off with when the first payment is going to be made and in the order that the payoff is going to be done. So in this case, this is highest interest rate. So it says payoff schedule for highest interest rate, priority, no roll-up. And here we see that Hardware Store Card has the current payment emphasis, and all of them have their first payment for this month being the first month that the payment's made. The last part of this listing shows the last payment that is made for each debt in order of payoff. It shows when they were paid off, the last payment amount, the total amount that was paid, the original principal, and the interest amount. Below the summary, we have an amortization schedule for each debt, again in the order that the debt plan put them in originally. So in this case, the Hardware Store Card had the highest interest rate, and so it was first in the list. And this is the amortization schedule for that card. So if we look at this, have some information at the top. It says payment schedule for Hardware Store Card at 18%, highest interest rate. The columns are the beginning balance, interest amount, minimum payment, additional payment, if any, and the ending balance and date for that month's payment. And then the last column is a month counter. So this one we see that the beginning balance was $4,500. The interest amount for the first payment was $67.50. The minimum payment was $90. If we go down to the bottom, we see the last payment was $8.32 on month 451, and then we have a total of $11,896.66 paid in interest and $16,396.66 in the total principal that is paid out, or the total payment that is paid out, not total principal. If we look at the last payment for the Hardware Store Card, we see that those values correspond here, where it was paid off October 1st, 2055, last payment of $8.20. The total is the totals at the bottom, and we have the principal amount and interest. Now we can look at the amortizations for each one of the debts. So we got the amortization for the major credit card, amortization for Department Store Card 2, and we notice that Department Store Card 1 was the first one that was paid off. If we click on that, we can see that it was paid off in 44 months. And we can see the amortization schedule for each one of these debts. So now we've seen the amortization and payoff schedule for the debt plan for highest interest rate with the no roll-up option. So let's go up here to the View Amortization For, and let's change this to Plan Current Payoff with Roll-Up. So we're going to click that. We're not going to change anything. We're going to leave the additional margin here at $20, and we're going to click Calculate. So we've looked at the summary before, and as we're probably going to expect, we have the highest interest rate first. We have the values that we saw before. Our payoff schedule looks similar to what we had with no roll-up. At least it starts off that way. The first part of it is exactly the same. However, now when we have a debt that is paid off, we see what happens to that payment amount in our payoff schedule. So in this listing, we see that the Department Store Card 1 was paid off first on November 1st, 2021 with a last payment of $5.87 for a total of $650.87. The principal of $500, interest of $150.87. On that same month, there's some payment amount that was left over from that Department Store Card, and we see the next line that amount, a one-time payment of $9.13 for the Hardware Store Card, was paid on that same month. And it shows its new balance on that month. Now, the balance is the payment amount for the Department Store Card minus its last payment. So $5.87 plus $9.13 should be the $15 that we were expecting to see here. So next, the hardware store card now has a new payment of $105 starting on December of 2021. So the next month, the following month after the department store card 1 was paid off, the total amount for the department store card payment is now rolled up into the hardware store card. So in our department store card 1, we have $15. Our hardware store card was $90. So the 15 plus 90, the hardware store card payment now is $105. If we look at the amortization schedule, we can see exactly what was happening here. So if we come down to the bottom and we look at department store card, we see that it was paid off in month 44, just like it was before. $5.80 was its last payment, with 7 cents in interest. So $5.87 was the last payment that we noticed in our summary. $5.87. Now if we go to the hardware store card amortization schedule, since it was the first debt in our listing, this is again the order that the margin will be applied. We go down to month 44 and we see what's happening here. So on month 44, because the hardware store card had its payment first, it got its payment of $90 on month 44, but then it also got the balance of department store cards 1's payment, which was the $9.13. And then the following month, in December of 2021, in this example, we see that the entire amount of $15 was applied as an additional payment to the hardware store card. If we come back up to our payoff summary, we see that department store card 2 was the next one to be paid off in January of 2023. Last payment of $814, and it also was applied to the hardware store card because it has the payment emphasis. We go down to the department store card 2 amortization schedule. We see that it was paid off in month 58. So in month 58 of the hardware store card, we see that it made its payment for $15 plus the $90 that was originally there. It got an additional $6.86 on that same month, and then the next month its payment was the $90 plus an additional $30 in margin, because department store card 1 and department store card 2, their payment amounts equal the $30. And if we go through each one, we see this happening for each debt that gets paid off. So the car loan gets rolled up into the hardware store card. Then finally the hardware store card gets paid off, and then its payment gets rolled up into major credit card. So we can see that in the hardware store card, it gets paid off in month 66. Its last payment is $196.80 plus this $295 in interest. If we go to major credit card, which is the next debt, and we go down to month 66, we see an additional amount of $183.01 for that month. Then the next month it gets the full amount of $383.56, and that lasts for just a couple of months until month 72. In month 72, we see here that it gets paid off and gets rolled up into the minivan loan. So in the minivan loan, we go down to month 72, and it happens to get paid off about that same month. So it received a grand total of 34 cents, but the balance of that gets rolled up into the home mortgage. So now we go to home mortgage, go to month 72, and we see the difference in the payment for the minivan loan and the major credit card, and then its total gets applied the next month, in month 73. And this goes on until they are all paid off. So here we can see in month 181, That must have been the next debt on April 1st of 2033. Go back up to our summary, we can see that. April 1st of 2023, the home equity loan got paid off. Its last payment was this 55 cents, and then a one-time payment of $106.68 was put into the home mortgage, and then the new payment of $2,142.53 was applied to the home mortgage. So home equity loan was actually paid off first. Home mortgage was the last one to be paid off, and it gets paid off in month 206 in 5/1 of 2035. And if we look at our summary up here, 5/1 of 2035. If we go to the what if, we can see this applied in our amortization schedule. So the summary looks the same. Our payoff schedule is similar but has different values. The amortization schedule, if we look, hardware store card has the payment emphasis, and we look from the beginning, its additional payment is $20. So it has an additional $20 from the beginning, and it starts adding additional payments as debts get paid off. So here we can see how the detail information from the view amortization for, in this case, plan new payoff what if, gets us some information that can allow us to start to customize our own debt payoff. So now that you've invested about a half an hour in this tutorial, you're probably wondering, how does this apply to me? Well, if you look at the debt list and you look at the last column has some icons that will allow you to customize this for your situation. Again, these debts here are from the book, and it's just an example of what can be done. So if you want to tailor this, let's go ahead and let's delete these debts from the list by clicking on this little garbage can icon to remove the debt. We're going to get to this last debt, and if you think, oh, what did those others look like? If this debt listing is empty and you click calculate, it's going to come back and say no debts to calculate. However, if you go back up to the debts button, refresh, if that debt list is empty and you click calculate, it will put the same debts back in its place. So just to show you, I'm going to delete all of these except for one, and I'm going to click calculate. So now it did a calculation for one debt, and that one debt is going to stay there until I either delete it and replace it, or I delete it and click calculate and then refresh the page, and all of these are back. So if you get lost and need some frame of reference, just delete all the debts and click calculate and it will refresh. But let's go ahead and add some custom debts so that we can see how we can apply this to us. So when I come in here, I'm going to delete these again, and below these garbage cans, these delete icons, I have this add debt button. I'm going to click on that, and it brings up a dialog for adding a new debt. I can name this whatever I want, so I'm just going to say my mortgage. Principal amount of $125,000, interest rate of 4% with a payment of $600. Now these debt categories, all of these calculate exactly the same way except for credit card. So these categories are just to show in the debt list what type of debt they are. Again, the only one that's different is credit card. So I'm going to select mortgage, I'm going to click Save Changes, and now I've added a new debt to my list. And to see how this works, I can just click Calculate, and here's my summary. So in this case, I only have one debt. No roll-up, with roll-up, and what if are all going to be the same. There's no interest savings, there's no month saved because it's one debt. I can do a what if by changing something in here, and that will change the value in the what if column. So let's just look at that. I'm going to add $50 to this for additional margin, and we see just what $50 will do to this payment. I save $13,656.52 and 4 years and 1 month in savings by adding $50 a month to this debt payment. So just right away, this is one way to maybe throw some quick numbers into one of your debts just to see what it would do for your debt plan and your debt roll-up. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to add another debt. So I'm going to say my car for, let's say it's $15,000, 5.5% interest, and the payment is $300. I'm going to select auto loan, save changes. So now I've got two debts in here. Again, I can calculate, and here I've got, with no roll-up, that's going to be the total interest. With the roll-up, I have this much interest and this much interest saved, and again, like the previous part of the tutorial, the with roll-up and the what if are the same because I haven't put in any options. I'm going to add $20 to this, click calculate, just so that we have some different values in here. I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to say, let's look at the what if amortization so that I can see a summary. So here, it's pretty short. I only have two debts, but I have my car and my mortgage. So my car, it has the payment emphasis because it has the higher interest rate, and it gets paid off in month 53. In month 53, if I come up to my mortgage, and come down here, I see in month 53 I get the balance of its payment, and then I get the total payment amount, which is the $300 plus the $20 margin. And so that additional $320 stays with the payment amount until the last payment. And so here we see the savings for those values. I'm going to add one more, my credit card, for say $3,000, an interest rate of 11%, and a payment of $60. I'm going to make it a credit card. Now the credit card is a little different because typically the payment amount is a calculation, and usually it's about 2 to 2.5% of the balance. The payment amount actually changes based on the principal, and that's why when we talk about the credit card payment, it's a little different. It also has a minimum payment, and different institutions have different minimum payments. Mine happens to be $25, so I'll click that. I'll save those changes, and then I'm going to click calculate. Actually, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to click original payoff just to show you the amortization for the credit card before we apply the debt roll-up. So I'm going to come down here. My credit card is the first because it has the highest interest rate, and if we notice that the payment amount, so the balance is $3,000 and the payment is $60. So the payment change is based on a percentage of the minimum payment to the balance. In this case, it's 2%. So as the balance goes down, so does the minimum payment amount. So that's why we have a minimum payment amount of $25, so that once it reaches that minimum payment amount, and here we notice that it reaches that minimum payment amount in month 82, and then it doesn't go below that amount. And this is by design. I guess legislatures have come back to institutions that were making this as low as possible, this minimum payment amount. It would be a couple of dollars for the minimum payment, and you would just keep paying and paying and paying. So the $25 is the minimum payment here. The payoff for the roll-up amount keeps the first payment in the debt plan. So if I click on calculate and I go back to the amortization for the credit card, this does not assume that the payment amount decreases every month. it keeps the same payment. So you don't have to guess at what the payment amount. The initial payment amount is going to be the same payment amount for the entire balance. And that's why credit cards with the amortization schedule and the debt payoff in this debt plan calculation get paid off so much faster. So in this case, this gets paid off in 59 months. Well, looks like the car gets paid off sooner and gets applied to this at the end, close to the end, I should say, of the payoff for the credit card. So now we see that we can go in and add our own debts into the debt plan and run a custom calculation for our debt plan. So this one is the current plan with roll-up. So that's this one without any options. But here's our payoff schedule. So this isn't the payoff schedule for the debts in the book. This is the payoff schedule for me. Hypothetically, if these were my debts, this would be my payoff schedule. So go ahead and go back to the debts page from this tutorial and clean these out. Click on these delete icons and add your own debts. Calculate your own debt plan.